Hello everybody, Wild Weiler here, and as you may have guessed from the title of this video, I have a lot of thoughts, most of which are complicated, about which companies and organizations should or should not have booths or a sponsorship presence at local Pride events. So let's get into it. I know. Big surprise, Wild has thoughts on a thing. I'm basically the thoughts dog at this point. Before we get into my thoughts though, I do want to note that these are my thoughts. These are thoughts that I had after attending my local Pride event. I do not make the rules for Pride events, and I do not intend to gatekeep individuals with these thoughts. I am here to gatekeep corporations though. I will own that. This is all about me saying which corporations and groups of people as groups and organizations and corporations I don't think should be at Pride. Most of these thoughts are vibes based, to be honest. But vibes are important. They teach us how to recognize safety and community. If the vibes are off, it is usually for a reason. And sometimes that reason is innocuous and you get over it, but sometimes it's important. So we are paying attention to our vibes here. So just remember that. I'll be presenting my thoughts in an orderly fashion. First, we'll start with which organizations and groups should not be at Pride. I am skipping over the obvious ones like, come on, no Nazis. Guys, like, geez. Do I have to say that? We're talking about stuff that isn't obvious maybe here to some people today. So if you can immediately think of somebody who shouldn't be at Pride, probably not going to mention them because it's obvious. Anyways, then we'll hit the maybes. You know, the groups that I'm not super happy to see at Pride, but their presence does actually inform the community of something that is important to know, so maybe it's okay for them to be there. And finally, there are the yasses. And what I mean by that is the groups I want to see at Pride, I want to see your group there, I want to see your people there representing your group there. Once again, talking about organizations here, not people. Pride is for queer people. Queer people should always be at Pride. The first and easiest no, politicians who are campaigning or attending as politicians. Should those individuals feel free to attend as a member of the LGBTQ plus community or an ally? Yet, I am very sick and tired of seeing local politicians waving banners with their own name on it, and they couldn't even bother to make like a rainbow or trans pride or any number of flag variants of their own name. Nope, it's still their American flag. Vote for me. Nothing about anything that I'm putting out there says Pride other than maybe I'm wearing a rainbow tie. I am here because you're giving something to me, not me giving something to you. I am tired of those people. They should feel free to attend, like I said, as members of the community if they are queer, or as an ally if they truly are an ally. And you know what? I'll even let them post on Instagram politically about how they went to Pride if they want to. But I shouldn't know somebody's name at Pride because they're holding a sign that tells me to vote for them. If I'm meeting a stranger at Pride, I want to learn their name because they told it to me, or because I found it on my Grindr screen looking at who's nearby. I'm really tired of local politicians that can't even bother to put out a rainbow flag asking me to vote for them at Pride. Aside, last year, both candidates for mayor were in our local Pride parade, which was bonkers because not a week before, one of them had been at an alt-right return to family values rally where the speaker prayed that God would burn our city down to cleanse it of its wickedness, Jonah style, which is nuts. Just absolutely nuts. Moving on. Tech companies like Google and Facebook, as well as consumer retail organizations like Target or Walmart or even freaking Safeway, I don't care, absolutely should not be at Pride. Tech companies have been some of the most transparent when it comes to casting aside groups and brutally stripping communities of places to be and find safety and have identity for the sake of profit. So letting them into Pride is explicitly inviting disaster, especially if we let them become pillars financially for these things, because prides aren't cheap. And the moment you tie that anchor around your neck, those tech companies will use that chain to pull you where they think they can extract the most money from you. Don't let them do that. It's bad. Retail companies are a similar yet different story, especially where I live, since in this area of the country, all the Pride merchandise seems to have dried up, which in itself isn't necessarily a bad thing. Mega corporations capitalizing on the queer community's identity is bad, don't get me wrong. But last year, we had tons of retail organizations selling Pride merchandise. Walmart, Target, everybody, Pride displays everywhere. It was a rainbow capitalistic utopia. And then this year there was nothing. Actually, there was weirdly less than nothing. Where all the Pride displays were, there were displays about patriotism and barbecues, which sent a message, a very clear message, and I heard it, retail companies, and that's why I don't think you should be at Pride. You are not my friend. You have made it clear you are not my friend. You are a fair weather patron, and as long as perks, i.e. my money, come your way, you will be there. But the moment things get for you, you're gone. So you don't get to be at Pride. That's just that. This really does extend to all for-profit corporations. They serve, by definition, money and not people, and Pride is fundamentally about people. Therefore, limiting the access to groups that don't serve people is an important thing to consider when we're deciding which groups should be allowed to represent themselves at Pride or not. If you're a giant retail organization and you feel hurt by anything that I've just said, there are LGBTQ+ shelters in nearly every mid and large-sized city, some for adults, some for teens, some that focus specifically on transgender issues. The point is all of them need food, clothes, and furniture. And as a giant retail organization, I know for a fact you can acquire these things at wholesale prices. So you can attend Pride when all the shelters in all the cities you operate in don't have physical needs. You guys work out amongst yourselves who's going to take care of what, but let's be honest, there's a lot of needs out there, and you don't get to do the victory lap until you do the work. Tech companies, if you're upset at what I just said, grow up and do better. We all know you're evil. You know you're evil. I feel like you're all going to prison soon anyways because things just keep getting worse for you guys. Just do better. Listen to the tons of people within you and around you that tell you how your actions affect queer people. I'm not going to rehash all of that. There's so much content on the internet out there about how tech companies could be doing better. Just do that. Just do that if you're a giant tech company. Mr. Facebook, if you're watching this. Jeez. Let's call this section, while I get annoyed that banks and insurance companies have a presence at Pride, they do provide opportunities for people to see which companies don't mind be associated with Pride. So here we go. There are some corporations, some for-profit corporations, that maybe should have a presence at Pride. And that is only because we live in a world that continues to be deeply unjust to queer people. And there are companies that in our society we have decided to completely outsource essential services to. These following companies and groups provide essential services in our modern society, and their presence at Pride does actually put people at ease. And because of that, they should probably be nationalized immediately. Banks and insurance companies being present at Pride gives queer people an opportunity to directly interact with employees of said organizations, and this can be invaluable. Knowing which banks and insurance companies aren't going to hassle you for being queer is a good thing to know. And a good way to tell that is the ones that are at Pride or post Pride things to their social media accounts. Now, I do also know from personal experience that a private company can show up at Pride, but individuals, say providers, can be absolute jerks still. So it's not a catch-all, but it is good to know what local health organizations aren't going to perhaps make you jump through a bunch of hoops if you need queer healthcare. And there have been organizations that have been going to Pride for a long time to show that. So while I might be frustrated constantly that they are for profit and that they're not nationalized, because anything that is vital for survival probably shouldn't be dependent on generating a profit, they're there and they give people opportunities. And I won't take that away from people, as much as it does frustrate me in my own journey. It was so nice to see at Pride, we're moving into the yeses, by the way. It was so nice to see at Pride governmental agencies that people absolutely need. I am talking about you, the VA, specifically. The VA had a big old gay bus, whole bunch of big old gay veterans talking about big old gay stuff, and it was awesome. Mainly because LGBTQ service members have always faced discrimination. The VA being at Pride is a massive change from the days of queer people being dishonorably discharged from the military. So seeing them there, I think, was important. They should definitely be there to show that we have come so very far, even though we continue to face uphill battles. Being queer in the military is still hard. It's still difficult. But being out of the military, when you're fully in veteran town and you're fully getting healthcare and stuff from the VA, knowing that your, let's call it militarial aftercare, is taken by people who are accepting of you, well, that's pretty good. So you know what, the VA, continue being at Pride. That surprised me. Another really good group that was at Pride, our state's version of Housing and Human Development. They were at Pride, and they should be at Pride. LGBTQ people should be able to know what the housing law is, and the best way to do that is to come to them. We're all down at Pride, so having representatives of government agencies that provide essential services at Pride so people can have an entry point into those agencies is good. This is where things get a tiny bit tricky, because right now it's a resounding yes. I live in a state that has a lot of protections for LGBTQ people. Some states are very, very hostile to LGBTQ people, and therefore maybe representative of your agencies either stay at home or be very, very proactive in the way you give advice to queer people. This is all to say that any service that is vital to a queer person's survival should be present at Pride. And this is where I want to hang another asterisk. I mean modern Pride, which is more celebration than protest. Now, don't get me wrong. Don't get me wrong. We will turn this into a protest again if we need to, okay? Right now, it's very much about being, we're here, we share this world with you, and we refuse to change ourselves because this is as much our world as it is anybody else's. And that's really the heart of modern Pride. And I kind of love that. I think it's better than having to be a protest or a riot. But we will riot if we need to. Let me make that very clear. Okay, government agencies that are attending. So as long as you're supporting us, keep attending. The moment that changes, it's riot time. Another group that I had never actually thought of until this year. Local social clubs and social organizations. And I don't mean this in the charity organization sense or the social awareness organization sense. I mean, I was walking down the sort of set of Pride booths in the park, and the rowing club had a booth. And I was like, this is awesome. 10 years ago, I would have absolutely killed to have a line of local clubs and organizations that were like, hey, queer people, we're showing up to your event to show that you're welcome at ours. I would have loved that. So any social club that is welcoming of queer people should be at Pride. For sure, 100%. If you're a run club, if you're a rowing club, if you're a 40K club, if you're a bird photography group, you need to be at Pride if you welcome queer people. Because for non-queer people watching this, there's an anxiety that you live with as a queer person. Every time you meet a new group of people or go to a new place that you intend to be yourself in, and you don't know how coming out is going to be. And I say that because you might be out, you might be the most obvious person in the world, but there will always be somebody when you introduce your partner or spouse or polycule that is like, oh, I didn't realize you were blah. And the vibes always change after that, and it sucks sometimes. Sometimes it's fine, but anytime you accidentally surprise somebody with your queerness, things change and it gets weird. For a little bit anyways, and then it gets better sometimes, most of the time. Long story short, if your organization is at Pride welcoming queer people, they just enter the door of your place like, hi, I am here, I am queer. And there's none of that awkwardness, there's none of the anxiety. Taking that burden off of people is the best thing anybody can do. And clubs and organizations for specific activities at Pride do exactly that. They remove that burden just by being there. And for that reason, you should be there, because it is a huge, huge relief when a group proactively reaches out and says, you are welcome here. So far, all of the thoughts I have expressed have been about organizations at Pride and organizations that represent themselves at Pride. Or politicians, many of which act like for-profit organizations, if we're honest. Their profit just isn't necessarily money. This is where things get complicated, because organizations don't exist without people. Organizations are run by people. People do the work. The idea that profit is nothing but undercompensated labor comes from the fundamental truth that profit doesn't appear. It is generated by people doing work. So this is where everything I said gets really complicated really, really fast, because corporations don't attend Pride. They might have a presence at Pride, but people attend Pride. Maybe as representative of corporations, but they are still people. I want to be clear that I'm not saying a person, any queer person especially, should not attend Pride because they represent a corporation. I don't want to say that. Queer people, you're welcome at Pride. Non-queer people, figure out your reasons for going to Pride and then attend or not, depending on, what you have going on. I'm not going to tell you how to live your life because I'm too busy living my own. One of the things we ignore in modern life is how much our work affects our identity. If you look at towns where groups of people get laid off by large companies because that industry is sort of no longer profitable there is the initial economic impact, for sure. But there is a secondary, just as meaningful impact where groups of people have lost their identity. The thing that they were told their whole lives gives them value is no longer available. Is it wrong to measure people's value by their work? Yes, but we cannot change the fact that we have done this, and that therefore when you take away work from people, it hurts them. So I need to be very careful not to do that here, which is me just simply saying, if you go on Facebook, there are endless groups about people with the same jobs, all meeting and greeting and sharing and building community within those jobs. And is Pride not about queer community? So how do we square this particular rectangle, if you will? Or I guess triangle, because we're all queer here. It's hard because organizations are comprised of people. This year, my Pride Parade had representatives from types of companies that I said should not have a presence at Pride. That does not mean that I think the people should not have marched. Those people had every right to march as any other participant in the Pride celebration. I would say, if you're marching in Pride, march in a way that celebrates your whole identity. Job and all. Do your thing. Just don't carry water for a company that doesn't deserve it. Now, does that mean you shouldn't march with your work group? Nope. Not saying that. I'm saying march your identity. And that might include marching with your work group, and more power to you, the individual. I just want to note, because this is the way I am, I find it really weird when you see, I'm going to use Walmart as an example because they had the biggest group this year. Walmart goes by with their Walmart banner and everybody wearing the same like yellow Walmart t-shirt. It wasn't really obviously a Pride t-shirt. That annoyed me. That really did. It was just a sea of like, this is Walmart's section. Hey, those people still walked in a Pride parade because Walmart employs a ton of people, which means a ton of those tons of people are queer. And you know what? Working at Walmart might be their opportunity to march with the community they interact with most, which is namely other Walmart employees, and good on you. So I'm not saying don't march in Pride with your company. I'm saying wear your pup gear over your Walmart t-shirt. Pride is for you, friends. Be proud. These are my thoughts after attending my town's Pride celebration this year. So they're a little raw. They're a little not super well formed, but I also thought they were important to get out there because they are so very real. They are very in the moment. I recently witnessed a Pride parade. Write down my thoughts, read them out loud, and see what people think. Hopefully I've inspired some thoughts. I would love to hear your thoughts. Feel free to leave them in the comments. If you thought I missed anything that I absolutely should have talked about, leave it in the comments. If you thought I was wrong about something, leave it in the comments. There's a tendency to have thoughts and then cook them for too long. You can also underbake your thoughts. Don't get me wrong. I have a lot of thoughts that are very doughy in the middle, but you can also overbake them, you know, and sometimes you need to remember that Pride was a riot and nobody stopped to think, is it okay that I'm prying up this brick to throw it at somebody who's oppressing me? And I'm not saying I was oppressed at Pride. I'm just worried that there's a path here where corporations get to control Pride, and that scares me. In any case, go to your own Pride celebrations. I hope you enjoy them, and I hope to see you all next year.